Video 2, Volume 2, Comparison to Others. We as humans are really human chimps. We are wired and addicted to care about status, how we fit within society, and what's normal and not normal. We have to learn how to unwire what we've been taught and create a mindset shift. When we compare ourselves to others, it gives us a sense of worth or value. When we compare ourselves to another person, we can see how we are doing in comparison to them. It helps us form opinions on our own actions or what we have done relative to other people. How can we know our value unless we measure ourselves to others? These numbers, metrics, and statistics of others, maybe someone else's height, net worth, begin to create these invisible labels of ourselves. We begin to respect people based on how high the number is that we give to somebody. For example, if someone is really rich, their number is high. It's the reason why conversations change when you tell someone you're a full-time forex trader, or the look changes on people's faces when you jump out of a really nice car. Automatically, people want to know who you are, what you do for a living, so they can decide how much respect or authority to give you. The idea in having a self-fulfilling life is to remove these statistics, metrics, and value scanning we continuously do each time we see someone. No one wants to be seen as random, a weirdo, or different. It goes back to when we were chimps and we would try and fit into the tribe. Think about when we were all in school and someone in your year was different. Maybe they had a stutter or their hair was dyed blue. Those people were always bullied because they were different. They did not fit into the general consensus of the rest of the school. This proves how young we begin to judge and compare ourselves to others. Unfortunately, this continues right into adulthood and pretty much until we die. Another reason we compare ourselves is because of competition. Some of us use others to compete against. I do this myself when I've run businesses in the past. Naturally, I look at what my competition are doing, or most importantly, not doing, and I set out to compete against them. This is where comparison and metrics can be leveraged for improvement within your own life and creation. Not all comparing is bad, because if we had no knowledge of what anyone else was doing on the planet, how can we know if what we are doing could be improved or not? Using another person's business and maybe how they negatively run that business to help improve and empower your own business is a positive way of using comparison. Very similar to using comparison as an inspiration, which is also healthy. When it becomes unhealthy is when you begin to envy and you become jealous. It's a feeling of lack because the person you're viewing maybe has what you feel is a better personal appearance, or maybe they seem smarter than you, or you're envious because of their status or net worth. It's a sad and heartache feeling which makes you feel like they have something you need which you do not feel like you have or cannot have because they must be better. It feels like without having what they have, you feel like you cannot be happy. It's a never-ending cycle of, if only I could have that, I would be happy. If only I had those kind of friends or that kind of sense of humour, then I would have a great life. It's this continuous personal feedback loop and view of yourself which causes an ego issue. It's a thirst for power, status, good looks, and generally always trying to be number one. We only have to look on Instagram to see how Instagram models never stop at one lip filler. It becomes 2, then 3. So what does that say to you? It says that before they had their first lip filler, they were convinced that's all they would need to feel happy about themselves. But it wasn't, because they then had another filler and another. I spoke to someone about this not long ago. They asked me, do you think once you have the big house, the car, the rich lifestyle, you stop wanting for more? Truth is, you don't. This is why you see rich people, and I'm not just generally labeling all rich people like this, who buy the big house in a beautiful neighborhood to then get settled. 6 months later, the house next door has had an extension which includes an indoor swimming pool, and they upgrade their car. Now your house and car doesn't look as great as their house and car. So now you refinance or remortgage your house to compete with how their house looks. So does it ever really stop? No. Although I have spoken about being poor isn't admirable or inspiring in other videos, everything in life is about balance and context. You can obviously have people who are stupidly rich and have everything the rest of the planet wants but be miserable. And you can also have someone who has very little but is very happy. So is there one rule which fits all? No. You can be rich and have everything the rest of the world wants and live a happy life. There's an old myth that says money can't buy happiness, and it's true, but that doesn't make money bad. It just means that regardless whether you're poor or rich, what really matters is if you live a fulfilling life. Fulfilling is living with purpose and being intentional, and money and status does help with this. So I don't want to sit here and entirely boycott wealth. I am pro-wealth, pro-status, and positively biased towards it. With wealth, you can change things, give to charities, help the Amazon rainforest from burning down. But on your rise to wealth, it's important to rewrite your perspective and outlook on others to ensure when you do get to a great place in life, to enjoy the fruits of your labour, or even on your journey to that point, that you're not continually obsessing over what everyone else is doing or what they have. Because the fact is, the more you're comparing and watching others and allowing it to negatively affect your own life, happiness and actions, you will never have huge success, wealth or happiness anyway. Even if you win the lottery, nothing can fix you if you cannot rewrite and fix yourself. No amount of money, status or friends in the world can do this. This is what people mean when they say money cannot buy happiness, as it's very easy to find yourself being negative towards money. Understand the quote. Also, on your rise to the top, we begin to compare ourselves to those below us as a form of security. Because when you are living a life of average and hang around with average people, you feel better because those average people do not really want much more of you. You all eat similar foods, no one talks about losing weight, or maybe you all smoke together and no one talks about quitting smoking. You almost all become each other's encouraging partners to ensure no one breaks out and does anything differently. Honestly, this is why basic people stick to basic people. Because basic people are insecure about themselves, so they eat shit food and encourage you to eat shit food too. So that if they get fat, you can get fat with them. Or they encourage you to eat shit food, they don't eat shit food, so when they are stood next to you, they feel better about themselves. Hence why you see a beautiful girl who has all overweight friends. She looks great next to them and she knows it. But what happens when you break out of that 10-year cycle of the same friendship group when no one really had any other different opinions? What happens when you start to speak sense? You tell yourself, I'm not smoking anymore. I refuse to keep drinking every Friday with these people. I'm going to approach my friends or family and let them know that I want us all to begin looking after ourselves, eating healthy and working out. Or when you approach your friend or family and tell them that you've been promoted or you've just started learning to trade Forex, they freak out. You become like an alien to them. You're cast out of the group for being different, which hurts. Then what happens? On your rise to the top, you leave those kind of people behind, which is understandable because you've outgrown them. You climb and you become number one. You're on a pedestal and you've made it in life. You begin looking at these people who were once in your life and comparing yourself to them to see what they're up to. Have they now also broken out of the mold and found greatness within their life? Because when you become number one, there's nowhere else for you to go except to number two and below. So use this comparison as a form of security to ensure you stay on top. Always trying to keep the top position. Always comparing to ensure no one is overtaking you. The reality is, as much as comparison to you sometimes can genuinely feel like life or death, it's really just a made up way of looking at those around you. It's a complete waste of energy. It's a never ending cycle of replacing the joy of your own accomplishments with comparison and misery. Most of the time, we compare ourselves because of low self-confidence, not owning our own character, refusing to be unique and love our individual traits and habits, giving in to the conformity of society and the feeling of lack within yourself. With business, there is something I've always stuck by. People used to say to me, are you not worried that if you share so much, people will copy you? No, never, because of 3 reasons. Number 1, the pie is always big enough for myself and others. I never feel like there is not enough resources to go round. Number 2, 95% is the idea, 5% is execution. 9 times out of 10, if you share an amazing idea with 50 people, 99.9% of those people will not steal the idea and turn it into the massive vision that you saw, because it's not their vision. Everyone has ideas. Not enough people have the get up and go and enthusiasm you have to make it happen. 3. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Those who replicate and take what I have created is seen to me as a compliment. Obviously, if someone is trying to entirely take what I may have built and own it as their own, that's a little bit different. When you have those who copy you, it's a good thing. It means you're setting examples and setting trends as opposed to following trends. What do you want to be? A trend or forever? I want to last forever, not just be someone who comes and goes. which is why I create the content lasts forever, and the copycats last for 5 minutes. But because people believe there is a lack of resources, or because they find themselves clawing their way to the top and comparing themselves to everyone they meet along the way, they always feel like until they get to that place, they will never be happy. That place they are convinced others are at already. It's a mentality that if you win, someone has to lose. Truth is, everyone can win. Who have you compared yourself to in the last 24 hours? I know from personal experience how dangerous it is without even realizing it when you compare yourself to another person. You could be having such a great day or result with something you have worked hard on. All of this can be lost within seconds when you find out someone had a better result or day than you. This applies to Forex trading too. You may have a smaller account, maybe £500, when the person you stalk or compare yourself to daily has a £1 million account. Maybe the person with the big account has returned a huge sum of money, for example, £25,000, and you have only made £100 on your £500 account. Looking at their result can make you feel like you haven't actually achieved much at all in comparison to them. But in actual fact, you made £100, which is 20% return on your account. They only made £25,000, which is only 2.5%. It's easy for us all to base our lives on the 5% best moments we see published on another person's Instagram or Facebook. We need to understand that we will only ever see what they choose for us to see. Let's be honest, no one is going to publicly show their bad days, failures, the argument they may have had with their boyfriend or girlfriend 10 minutes ago. I have met some people who, if you looked at their Instagram profile, seem to live an extraordinary life. When you spend time around these people, you realise their life is just the same as yours, except they've managed to capture only the best moments and posted those instead. It's a false logic. Think about the last time you checked your social media feed. You're scrolling through, stopping, clicking on someone else's profile, and before you know it, you're almost at the bottom of the page, having looked at nearly every photo and read through every caption, and you're sat feeling empty, envious, or it's made your life feel boring or non-existent in comparison to their life. It's damaging. Excessive time on social media does increase depression and jealousy and decreases well-being, confidence, and the ability to be proud of yourself and offer yourself credit and self-love. Other people's destinations or outsides cannot be compared to your journey or insides. We see it time and time again. Those we follow who we admire or inspire us, maybe with their romantic relationship, suddenly split up unexpectedly, or someone who we felt was super rich and lived a luxury lifestyle far from bankruptcy. I know from first-hand experience, nothing is what it seems on the surface. I often wonder how much truth we see of a person we may follow. Think about mental health, suicide rates, and depression. Those you would never even think were within this dark place actually are. Because people build this fake story around themselves, which they try so hard to maintain, eventually they slip up. Remember, everyone is a genius. But if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. We cannot simply compare the strengths of others to our weaknesses. It's a recipe to instantly feel horrid about yourself. The reason why most of us compare ourselves to others is because other people become the mirrors of how we can see ourselves. For example, based on a previous version of yourself, maybe within trading, you've actually come miles and miles with improvement. Your trend lines are better placed, your charts are cleaner, you understand the market better, your win rate and positive expectancy has increased. But if you mirror this to someone else who maybe also started at the same time as you but had 50% more time than you did to study, their improvement is likely to be faster achieved than your own. Because of this, you now have a comparison. Because how can we ever know if we are good or bad at something until we have some form of benchmark to compare it to? This is why you use people to help us make that judgment. But in reality, we should only be using ourselves and the previous version of ourselves to compare to, never other people. We can use those people as an inspiration or use them to help maybe reduce our own learning curve or take parts from their journey to help us reach our own destination, but we have to operate on our own timing. It's important to use social comparisons through group identity to find our own personal identity. What I mean by this is use other people's journeys or destinations or personal traits as a way to help you, not destroy you. I have used so much from so many people in most occasions to guide me in what not to do with my own life instead of using it to hurt my own feelings. I observe and take note of what people are doing to help me choose what I want and what I do not want. It's a priority to find your own identity and character within the financial markets and with life. Besides, if you follow the crowd or a particular person, what if they get it wrong? You do too. How can you carve out who you really are if you're continuously living someone else's life or trying to live up to their lifestyle expectations when really what you're seeing is 95% fake anyway? You're going to find yourself building habits around things which actually do not exist and increasing your expectation bar every time you see someone you follow buy something new or hit some new goal. For example, you could really like some sunglasses you've seen. Maybe they're around £100. You've tried them on, bought them, owned them for maybe 6 weeks, and then suddenly you stumble across someone's page who has sunglasses which you also like, but they're £350. So now you're thinking, why did I bother buying the £100 one? I don't even like them anymore. I should have just got the 350 ones that they got. You end up resenting the sunglasses you've bought and you've lost all feelings towards them until you can get your hands on the 350 ones and own them. But then you see someone else with some even better ones. Now you want those. This applies to relationships too. We can find ourselves within relationships where we are very happy and content until we see the 5% highlight reel of someone else's. All of a sudden, you'll find yourself arguing with your partner over something they haven't done when they would have never done it anyway, just because the person you follow has done it once for their partner and posted it on Instagram. You need to think to yourself, whose side are you on? Are you on your own team or fighting against yourself? It's you versus you. You will find most people who lack personal confidence are biased towards their own being. They feel like they lack and forever feeling like they are missing something within themselves. Reality is, you have everything you need. When you look hard enough for a problem, you'll find it. There will always be someone better than you within Forex trading, richer than you, better looking, but does that really matter? Society has made us believe there is some manual to life, where traditions have been set by idiots who claim stupid things like the engagement ring you used to propose with should be 3 times your monthly wage, or you should be married with kids by the age of 28, otherwise you're too old. It's batshit crazy. There is no age or particular time anything should be done, or a set amount you should spend on a ring just because someone said so. It's all lies. Begin researching and really looking into the statistics on how many people really are consistently profitable within trading. Who really makes it? How many marriages really succeed? How many people in your country are really making over 80k per year? Begin digging into things, because I can promise you now, there really isn't that many people earning as much as they say they are, or as happy as they make out to be. How do I know? Because when you're happy and content in your relationship or life, you don't walk into your bathroom in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror with the happiness affirmations and repeat to yourself 10 times a day, morning and night, I am happy, my life is great. You just are happy, your life just is great. You don't need to stop and remind yourself or others because you're too busy being happy and living life to stop and tell others about it. Understandably, people do buy into lifestyle. Very similar to myself, I understand and appreciate I'm a role model for others and my success so far drives people to achieve similar things. What's the difference between my captions and uploads on Instagram and those I'm referring to within this presentation? I am never showing off. I speak from the heart. I make it clear and realistic on how difficult it has been to achieve what I have so far. I empower and install good belief into others to make them believe they can also achieve great things. I'm not posting images to make people feel negative about themselves or envious. I want everyone to win. That's the difference. There is absolutely nothing wrong with showing the fruits of your labour with the correct context to empower and lift others. Unfortunately, we do live within a generation today where others do not do this. Dare to be different. Begin working on not fitting in. Become really curious, educating yourself to increase your own personal values so you can become a leader, not a follower. Leaders go down in history as a much more than a statistic. Followers go nowhere. Remember, whenever you find yourself comparing yourself to others, think instantly, they are good at this, but I am good at that. They may have this, but I have that. Not that it is some form of competition, but you need to begin realizing that you will always have things which others may not ever have, and vice versa. Imagine if we all wore the same clothes, same haircut, same shoes, and all spoke in the same way. How boring. Can you ever really remember one person who was super successful in life who continuously went with the flow, copied others, and fitted into society? I can't. Being different and unique is so cool. Wear it with pride. damaging beliefs and how it alters our perspective. Self-worth and what we believe to be our value. A really great example of this is Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency is worth what people are willing to pay for it. It's very similar to a financial crisis where money literally disappears. Where does it disappear to? Thin air. It's also similar to when you buy a car for say 5,000, then a year later it's lost some value, so now you sell that car for 3,500. Where did the rest of the money go? It literally disappears. But how can money just disappear? Because the value of what people believe the item or maybe the person once was is different to what it is now. People will drive Bitcoin collectively as a mass of people to the 10k mark. But if some news comes out which seems negative, people begin selling, which obviously drives the price down. Bitcoin is like a bucket full of money. That bucket is only worth however much is in the bucket in terms of money. One day that bucket could be worth 10k, the next day 8k. It all depends on how much people believe it's worth and how much it really is. Similar to something sentimental, maybe your mother gave you something which is worth £50 before she died, but to you it's worth so much more. So you wouldn't sell it for £50 if someone offered it to you. You'd want at least 100, because to you it has value. So we have to understand that even though you think your self-worth is 20k, it's only ever worth what you can realistically break it down and sell it to for someone who is actually willing to pay for it or your time. This works with jobs too and hourly rates. Susan may work at a local supermarket for 20 years and approach her boss, ask for a pay rise, and the boss will refuse. Why? Because she only has 1 year experience repeated 20 times. Nothing new has changed, no new value. Some youngsters nowadays believe they are worth £20 an hour, but their work output is more like £8 an hour. We need to learn that something, someone, or time spent is only worth what someone is willing to pay. The reason why I explain this is because self-worth and what we believe is value or not is false logic. It's just an opinion. In reality, it doesn't really exist. How much true value you really put on things or people is entirely up to you. You give that price tag or that invisible label. You decide how great someone is in comparison to you. The worth you decide to project is up to you, when really nothing has any worth. It's just ego deciding whether something is worthy enough based on your own interests or how you perceive yourself to be. Worth is something we create. If you want to think critically and independent, you need to detach yourself from what you are seeing on platforms like Instagram and begin seeing if you attach yourself to people, things, money, you never really will feel fulfilled or happy. Because you will be chasing something which never really ends. Nothing outside of you in terms of material possessions will make your inside better long term. The idea is to shift your mind, realizing that you do not really need to measure yourself up against another person because they have the latest shoes or they have just bought another car which is an upgrade from the previous car. When you begin to cut and remove all this back and forth evaluating and overanalyzing, you free your mind up to focus on what really is important, which is bettering and improving the version of yourself you were yesterday, becoming more giving, more available, non-judgmental, and open like a book. The most powerful people on planet Earth are those who do not lack anything. They live a life with no strings attached, and they are not slaves to other people's values of opinions. Everything around us that is man-made was created by another human being who had no greater advantage or speciality than what you have. In fact, some things around us were actually created by people who had disadvantages. So when you decide to give power to other people and worship or stalk them and decide that this person must be better than you, you are falling into the trap of comparison. We cannot compare one human to another human, or ourselves to someone else. Why? Because of the variables which are included. We believe comparing to another person is so simple and black and white. Reality is, we all have had different backgrounds. Growing up in maybe different countries, maybe the person with money, their grandmother died and left them inheritance, maybe the person you see who is really healthy with amazing abs is struggling financially, but you're doing great financially but you have no abs. Maybe the person you follow has a great social life but they neglect their career. It's important to look at the bigger picture. Not everyone is perfect. Maybe the person you wish you were more like because they have a great car is actually depressed because they lost their father 2 years ago in a tragic accident. And every day for them is a continuous struggle. Whereas every day for you is great. It's so easy to find ourselves trapped in the I wish mode, wishing all the time to have a better life relative to another person when really we cannot know the full picture of that person. This is why I'm so against trying to be like other people. I know I will get the supercar, I already know and have belief I will own the big house with the triple garage, I know and believe if I work on becoming the best version of myself, I would attract a great set of friends into my life. I do not feel like I lack anything because I know whatever I want, I can obtain. For those people who already have it, I'm happy to use as an inspiration. But really, I'm more focused on what I am doing to become more intentional and only comparing myself to who I was maybe 3 months ago. I have no interest in what others have or what they choose to do. Comparison prevents creation. When you focus on just yourself and your own personal output, you have no time to focus on others, the competition, or the expectations of others and other people's validation. Begin focusing on your strengths in life. What are you good at? What are you weirdly obsessed with, which means that you can outwork other people who do not find it as interesting? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't show up. Life is far too short to be focusing on what you're not good at. One of the most important things to remember is average does not exist. Average was invented by another human being to basically find the average out of a huge amount of data to serve people and categorize people into boxes. The person who invented the average concept was a guy called Adolphe from Belgium. You can read more about him by googling who invented average. Originally, average was seen as perfection. If you can match up to the one-dimensional average measurements of, say, the average man, you were special. Nowadays, average is viewed as inferior or lacking. Everyone wants to be above average, even though the people who make up the average number are both above and below within the data. Everyone knows how to calculate average. For example, you would measure 50 men's shoes, maybe 10 have size 8, 15 have size 10, 10 have size 11, and 15 have size 12. You add all the measurements together and divide it by how many men to create an average shoe size. Then you create a shoe size to that size. Guess what? Turns out it fits no one. But average doesn't really help us at all in everyday life. Average just provides a benchmark for us to hit. If you fall below it, you're seen as inferior or basic. Average is an artificial fake number. Average has no place for uniqueness, and it creates a problem which doesn't really exist. If the average grade of a school student out of 30 students is a C within mathematics, what happens when you get a D? Does that now mean you're not good at mathematics? Which part of mathematics does that mean you're not good at? Because if it's an average score, you may excel in algebra but not be so good at multiplication. But because it's an average score giving out of the entire test, I guess we would never know. The problem also with average is that we as humans view people in a one dimension. For example, if someone says someone is tall, we expect a tall person in height, but tall in comparison to what? The average height of a man, which is what? Average is easily the most damaging belief all of us hold, and it's within everything we do. Average weather based on the last 30 days is say 25 Celsius, so if it falls below 25 C mark, the weather isn't great, when actually today could be a beautiful day. But it's instantly ruined because it's below average relative to other days. No one is average. Nothing is average, unless it's compared to something else. In the 1940s, average cost the United States Air Force a lot of dead pilots. It was the beginning of the jet-powered airplanes, and the planes were faster and more complicated than ever, but people were constantly crashing every day. Initially, the Air Force blamed the pilots flying the planes, which seemed logical since the aircraft rarely malfunctioned. Even after examining the aircraft after the crash, nothing was ever wrong with the engine. So if it wasn't the incredible pilots flying the planes and it wasn't the aircraft, what was the problem? In 1926, when the Air Force was designing its first ever cockpit, engineers had measured the physical dimensions of hundreds of male pilots and used the data collected to create a standard and average sized cockpit. Since it was designed, nothing had changed since the first design was created. Everything was the same size seat, height of the windshield, helmets, and where the pedals were positioned. This was literally designed to suit the size of an average pilot in 1926. The theory of the average would probably most likely be from Adolphe 100 years or more before this. To try and fix the problem, the Air Force wondered if maybe pilots had grown since 1926. So the Air Force launched the biggest study into pilot dimensions they had ever done. In 1950, researchers measured more than 4,000 pilots on 140 different dimensions. For example, thumb length, crotch height, etc. Then created an average for each individual dimension. The idea was to create a newly formed cockpit based on these average dimensions to reduce crashes. Now, if this was me, I would have thought this would just be repeating the problem all over again. But anyway, this was the idea that they had. A man called Gilbert S. Daniels was called in to help with finding the measurements of the men. Daniel's findings basically went against almost a century of military design philosophy. Using the data collected from 4,000 males from the 10 physical dimensions including height, chest circumference and sleeve length, he saw that even though the average height came back as 5'9", he had become defining the measurement as more of a range, for example 5'7" to 5'11". He crunched all the numbers and the general idea was that the pilots would fall within the average range on most dimensions. When they then used the individual numbers to compare against the overall average, they realised that not one pilot fitted even into the average range. Out of 4,000 pilots, not a single pilot matched up to the average range. One pilot may have had a longer than average arm length, but a shorter than average leg length. One pilot may have big chests, but small hips. Daniels also saw that if you picked 3 of the 10 dimensions of size, say neck circumference, thigh circumference, and wrist circumference, less than 3.5% of pilots would be average size on all 3 dimensions. It was obvious and clear to see, there was no such thing as an average pilot. If you design a cockpit for an average pilot, you've actually designed a cockpit for no one. A few years later, the Air Force adopted a new terminology. Instead of using average, they began designing their cockpits for a more individual fit. They designed adjustable seats, which is now standard in all cars and vehicles, adjustable foot pedals, adjustable helmet straps and flight suits. After this, the pilot performance soared and the US Air Force became the most dominant air force in the world. As you can see, average is extremely powerful in making us believe we need to fit into a certain bracket. Very similar to how the school system and adult tests have been built around the idea of average. But from listening to what I've just said, you can now see why average is rubbish, being normal is rubbish, what even is normal, comparison is rubbish, ideal or perfection is just a myth. What truly matters is uniqueness and individuality. You have no business being average or normal. You become more attractive and interesting if you become and own more of yourself. Choose to be chocolate with sprinkles and strawberry sauce instead of plain vanilla. It comes down to being relaxed with yourself. No act, just choosing to be who you really are. When you are completely relaxed, maybe around a certain person, you're not trying too hard. That's who you really are. It's about being authentic. Remember, the herd is always looking around trying to see its position relative to those around them. As an individual, your focus should be you, treating everything you do as DIY, doing it yourself. Working on everything which involves you, your health, education, relationships, which creates such focus you have no time to see what anyone else is doing. The average person has no sense of purpose. They're not in love with their life. There isn't much growth, hence why they focus on everyone else around them. Making statements like, I wish I was as good as that Forex trader. I wish I won the lottery. And wishing becomes a form of distraction and procrastination. Instead of wishing, they should be focusing on their own growth. Begin being happy for other people's success. Begin looking at what others have as an example of what you could also have. When I see something that someone else has, which I really want, I just visualize having it and knowing I'll get it just like they have. It's adopting a non-limiting belief system that you can basically have anything anyone else has or has had. There's no envy or jealousy there. It's just adding it to your own list of what you also want and your own vision and congratulating them that they already have it. Love those who inspire you. Be happy that the person you look up to has what you want, with the anticipation that when you get what you want, you will love yourself for having it and others will love you for having it too. You cannot get the things you want out of life if you're busy critiquing those who already have it, because your mind cannot tell the difference between the criticism of others and the criticism of yourself. When we really break down the majority of the comparisons we see within life, it's the obvious, such as personal looks, performance, financials, who someone maybe knows who we do not know. If we look at this, physical appearance, there isn't really much you can do about it. We need to accept how we look physically. There's certain things we can do, for example the obvious, drink more water for better skin, eat healthier foods to ensure we do not become overweight. We can work with what we have. But it truly comes down to accepting the general structure, height and size and appearance of our obvious features. For examples, our nose, eyes, hands, legs. When it comes down to comparing your performance to another person, say for example your trading performance relative to maybe mine, you're looking at me right now and thinking, he's a great trader, I want to be a great trader. All that really comes down to is time, commitment and hard work. Years ago, I was convinced I would never grasp the concept of Forex trading. I used to worship others and look up to them. Now, I am them. I've overtaken people who have been in the game for years before me. Why? Because I decided I wanted that level of performance. All it really comes down to is how bad do you want it? Do you want the level of performance I operate at? Or are you happy with less? Or maybe even more? No one will ever do something that they're not truly convinced on doing. For example, people would talk about wishing they could run 1 mile, but they just don't want it bad enough than the person who is running 1 mile. There's a confusion always between saying something and actually committing yourself with doing it. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from choosing to become something and then actually being it. I am no different from what you are. You just have to make that choice. You can acquire everything you want, which those you look up to have already acquired. I strongly believe tests and obstacles are placed in your way to see if you actually want it. I've just already crossed those. I can remember years ago when I was a guy with no Instagram, no authority, no trust or reputation. I used to always want to have a community, to inspire others, to own an educational platform, even years ago when I attempted something similar to this but teaching business. It failed miserably. I remember looking at other Forex traders years ago, messaging them, asking for help, only to be ignored or left on scene because I was a nobody within this world. Now those people message me. I set out on a task and told myself, if they don't want to know me, I'm going to make sure I make enough noise and bring enough value that they have no choice. Now they all view my stories and they all know I exist. So what I'm trying to say is, you may want status, to have friends who are high up, and that's achievable. You just need to get to work on growing yourself to the point where you become so big you're hard to ignore. Begin creating your own economy, your own self-sufficiency, and building your own self-confidence. Qualities such as confidence, intelligence, humor, cooking, being fit, it takes time. No one is just born confident or a great cook or a great trader. Only ever use comparison to see what's possible within your own life to use as inspiration for your own life. Things I want people to begin looking into or using or doing is a social media detox. If not a detox, at least begin going through who you follow and deleting anyone who makes you question yourself or knocks your own confidence. A gratitude diary. Use a diary to begin logging daily what you are grateful for. It can be small things or big things. It's a mindset shift which will allow you to focus on what you have as opposed to what you feel like you lack. Remove TV, newspapers and magazines from your life. I personally haven't watched TV or the news for years. Sure, I keep up to date with general political news because I have to as a trader, but I'm very strict on what I listen to and watch. I never watch the daily news. I'm convinced a bomb could drop 3 miles down the road and I'd have no idea that it happened. Begin journaling all the wins you've had. This could be small wins, for example, how you cooked a great meal, or how you turned up at the gym even though you didn't want to, or how you held the door open for someone today. You need to find ways to begin falling in love with yourself as a person. Journaling your wins will provide a log to look back on when you're doubting yourself as a person. I hope you've enjoyed video 2, volume 2, comparison to others. Let's now move on to the next video.